Hey, it's Marley from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for June 2023. So on June 18th, we have our new moon taking place in Gemini energy. This is going to be taking place at 12:37 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so maybe some of us will be experiencing the peak potent energy on the 17th, but it will be taking place at 26 degrees, which, as you may already know, is pretty late in the zodiac wheel, which is more suggestive that there are more things ending than there are things beginning. And the only beginnings that will be beginning are because of the things ending. Now, this is going to bring full circle of a cycle that began about 2 years ago with ideas that didn't get off the ground, with a vision, with a dream that didn't get manifested, but because of the information, because of the details, because of a lot of doors closing, a lot of options being removed from our ability to choose, what's left is more heart aligned than anything else. So let's unpack this for a second. First of all, the new moon is the dark phase of the moon. There's no illumination in the sky, which means that we're sitting in the shadow realm of our emotions, of our thoughts, of our experiences. We have to sit in the funk and recognize what it is that we don't want to experience, what it is that is no longer serving us, what it is that we're no longer connected with, in order to come up with a framework on what it is that we would like to build in our lives in the place of the system, routines, and structures that we're currently identifying we're no longer in alignment with. So a new moon, as fresh and exciting as it sounds, is very, very dark, very heavy, if you will, because we're sitting in the darkness, in the funk of our experiences, and focusing in on the seeds that we want to plant, the intentions that we want to have, the mission, the goal, the purpose that we want to pursue. But again, most of that at 26 degrees is only kind of being illuminated to us due to the things that are ending, the doors closing, the options being removed. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're settling. It means that the choices that we had on our plate, the path, the direction, the decisions, whatever the case may be, one was connected to the old version of self, old energies, old dreams, old visions, old perspectives, while there is a new option that is more heart and soul aligned that seems pretty scary because it doesn't make logical, practical sense. And because this is Gemini energy, the ruler of the mental plane, we are very egoically driven at this point because Gemini season is, the first of the 3 signs of the zodiac. This is where we build our identity up. This is where we choose to look at things from a different set of eyes and constantly try to improve and better the situation. That's what we get with the mutable energy. Gemini is a mutable energy, which means that we are open to change when the information is presented to us that a change is absolutely needed. And of course, we can all agree that we're in a time right now where things suck, things are heavy, things are hard. And a lot of that is because we are just days away from the summer solstice popping off when the sun moves into Cancer season, which is a brand new karmic chapter for us. But in order for a brand new anything to begin, the old has to crumble, the old has to fall away, and it never feels good to be going through a purge, a death, an ending, a closure point, which of course this new moon in Gemini is all about. So let's talk about Gemini energy for a second. Yes, it rules over the mental plane. It's where we kind of bring information and details in from our external realm, where we form an opinion and an impression about it, where we communicate and express our thoughts, our ideas outwardly to the external realm. But there's a lot of pressure in the mental plane because, of course, we're in Gemini season. Mercury rules over Gemini season, ruler of the mental plane. Mercury is currently in its place of power in Gemini energy and is ruling over this new moon. So he has like 3 crowns on his head right now. If he was on a situation where he had to sit in his place of power in thrones, he would have 3 thrones to choose from right now because he's in that much power, which means that there's a lot of pressure in our mental plane. There's a lot of pressure on us to figure everything out yesterday. There's a lot of pressure to choose, to decide, to orient ourselves, to figure things out, to have clarity. And because this is ego-based, because Gemini, again, is the third sign of the zodiac where we kind of develop our egoic identity, we're really starting to see where the gap is between the old version of self, our old path, the old construct of our reality, versus the new that is scary and unfamiliar and not clear to us right now. And we have to kind of explore the fact that when in Gemini season, and in this case, the new moon in Gemini, we're also activating the Sagittarius energy that sits across from the Gemini energy. They share the axis of information versus belief. So we are all about, right now, we are all about the information, the details, the logic, the practicality. We are actually more focused on taking in all of the hints and all of the clues in our external realm than we are kind of putting information and energy out. The I'm going to say listening part of Mercury and Gemini energy is being amplified, listening to your inner voice, into listening to the hints and clues around you, listening to your higher self, versus communicating, putting energy out there, putting information out there, dictating to other people what it is that you think and feel. This is the first Gemini season that I think the cat got all of our tongues. Normally, it's a very potent time for collaboration, for conversation, for communication. And what I've noticed is that many of us are so cluster-effed in our head and so exhausted in our physical bodies and so confused in our emotional realm that there's not a whole lot of chatter going on. There's a lot of inside chatter that we can't seem to articulate and actually get outside of our physical bodies. But as far as interacting with the world around us, we're a little bit more introverted this season than normal. So we kind of have to understand that Gemini energy, who of course is represented by the twins, is the division at its most truest form. And it starts with the division of self. So the ego self versus the higher self. The old self versus the new self. When it comes into the mental plane versus the heart space, that is why many of us are cluster-effed right now, because the mercurial Gemini energy is pushing us to rely and depend on our logic and practicality coming from our egoic mental plane and our intellect, versus the faith, the intuition, the knowing, the mission, the purpose. That, of course, that Sag energy is being activated on this Gemini and Sag axis. So this is very much about, like, what do we know to be true? What do we believe to be true? Because sometimes when we get stuck in the egoic realm, in our physical realm, only dependent on our intellect, well, we're only bringing in information and details of our current circumstances. It doesn't leave a whole lot of opportunity to dream, to wish, to hope, to believe. That's the magical part of our higher self, our intuition, that we have to open the door to in order to balance the energies in this Gemini season, is being able to know that you have to take a leap of faith, know that you have to believe in something, know that you have hopes and wishes and dreams in order to break through and break free from the construct of the reality in which we've built, in which we're currently like living in. So, you know, the twins kind of representing the division. This is why we're seeing another level of the division in the world on the collective stage within groups and communities. Now, you know, I could give you a million different examples here, but just take, you know, politics, take religion, take sexual orientation, take all of those topics and themes that you're kind of aware of out in the global grand stage right now. And what you can see first and foremost is division. And then in those groups, further divide within those groups. Of course, we're moving into Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, I should say. We've just dipped our toe in it, so we're not even near anchoring into that. However, the age of Aquarius is about like-minded communities coming together and having many like-minded groups and communities that are very different from one another. But right now, what we're seeing is the division within those communities. And that's just to kind of weed out the overlap of the extreme diversity that takes place in all stereotypes of groups and communities. This particular, I'm going to say, new moon is really pushing us to see where it is that we have to balance the scales, because again, keyword is always about balance. Balance the scales within the relationship with ourselves. And again, when we talk about relationship in 2023, we're in the vibration of 7. That is all about the relationship with self, the relationship with the people and the environment around us, in order for us to feel at peace, in harmony, in a balanced, grounded point in all that we're doing, in all that we're pursuing. And we need to find that grounding point before we enter into 2024, when all shit hits the fan. So what we're kind of being activated to do right now is to see where the division is, especially within self, and make every effort in order to bridge that gap and to merge, the ego with the higher self, the heart with the head, ourselves with our relationships, ourselves with our environment around us. We have the Gemini energy, which wants to know for sure. And then, of course, sitting across from that in the shadow realm is the Sag energy that is more about belief. And just a reminder that belief is the absence of knowing. To know something and to believe something, those are two totally different things. And we have to kind of bridge the gap between the two. Now, if you haven't downloaded your moon guide as of yet, I'm going to recommend you do so. We have some pretty deep aspects taking place here today with this new moon energy building towards this peak point, where we are going to see the potency of this Gemini energy just really pressurize our mental plane, our inner realm, if you will. That moon guide is going to walk you through all of the pros and cons of the aspects that are taking place. And heads up, we have far more tension and conflict aspects under this new moon than anything else. A lot of squares, let me just say. And Neptune, who is going to be going retrograde here at the end of June, is a key factor in this particular new moon in Gemini. And this is creating another layer of fog where confusion is needed. And people always say, oh, I'm so confused. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Well, then you're in a good situation. You need to be confused as F in order for clarity to actually strike you. You need to be in a breakdown situation before a breakthrough can happen. And we're at that very pivotal point. Like, we're just hours away from the solstice, which means that there is a huge ending, a huge closure. That's why it feels like everything is falling apart. And there's this pressure to figure everything out, because we're going to be moving into a brand new series of karma, building towards something new, building a new foundation for us to kind of operate on and for us to feel safe and secure in for the next coming of years. So, of course, this is a very turbulent time. But we're going to have a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of delusion. There always is with Neptune kind of in play here. It's very hard to see the direction that we need to walk, because again, this isn't about identifying the direction moving forward as much as it is about closing the door on the direction that you've taken in the past. And there is always, it's always darkest right before the dawn. It's always the most level of confusion right before a huge dose of clarity. There's always a very painful breakdown before a very inspiring breakthrough. And that's where we're currently at. So it's hard to see where it is that we're moving towards, what it is that we are, in pursuit of, but just take into consideration how uncomfortable you currently are in your life. I want you to think about the topics and the themes and the circumstances that you're just driving you nuts, that you can't stand for 2 more seconds, because that discomfort is the key indicator on where it is that you have to move away from some of these constructs and build something new in its place. And of course, all the squares that are taking place under this new moon is meant to amplify the tension and the conflict that we're currently experiencing within ourselves, within our circumstances, in order for us to create a forward movement away from the discomfort. So again, another reason why I've been saying that this new moon isn't about clarity. It isn't about identifying, the path forward, as much as it is identifying where it is that we're not going back, where it is that we're moving away from some of the constructs and having doors close and having options and opportunities removed from our plate for us to choose from, is providing us the forward motion and the clarity that we need to just start taking steps. We might not have all of the answers, all of the details figured out, but we sure as hell know what it is that we no longer want to experience and what it is that we don't want to sit in anymore. And that in itself is enough to create a forward motion. So in the moon guide, you're going to discover the elemental energy profile of this particular new moon. And once again, we have dominance in earth energies, which means that we are in the thick of it in our physical realms, in our physical circumstances. We are kind of being backed by air. So, no surprise there. There's a lot of mental stimulation, a lot of intense pressure in that mental plane in order for us to figure things out and really kind of dig deep and really uncover new information and details that's going to help us put the puzzle pieces to this new goal, this new dream, this new vision into play. But we have equal water and fire, which means emotionally speaking, we're still trying to find that inspiration, that motivation, that new passion, that new desire point in order to get us kind of, ass in gear and really kind of positioned on this new pursuit of happiness. So I also wanted to just throw in that, yes, we just had Saturn go retrograde as well. The Lord of Karma himself, go ahead, take and listen to that astro forecast, because that is a key factor in why some of these aspects are taking place in this new moon in Gemini. But also, we have Jupiter and Saturn sextiling here, not even like 12 hours in between the potency of this new moon, which means that there is a lot of focus on the potential of a prospect just as much as there is on the pitfalls, the challenges, the obstacles of bringing this potential prospect to life. And just a little bit to throw at you here. This actually takes us back to a cycle of 2017 when we had this particular aspect pop off. Of course, we're in different signs this time around, but it is kind of illuminating for us. Again, two very different paths, different choice points. One has unlimited potential, but carries a lot of pitfalls. The other one has not as many pitfalls, but not as much potential. And if we really want to get nitty gritty about it, we can go back to November to August of 2004-ish, 2003 maybe, but 2003 to 2004-ish, there is a similar struggle, a similar breakthrough energy repeating itself in this particular cycle. So we definitely are, I'm not going to say repeating the past, because we never truly repeat the past, but there's definitely some struggle vibes. And I think if you were to think back to those time frames, you would realize that you were on the cusp of a major change and a major transformation in your life. And of course, that should just give you the reassurance and the validation, the confirmation that is needed in this particular chapter of your life, because just as you experienced a pitfall, a breakdown, a confusion, a delusion point back then, this is what we're going through now. Everything worked out back then. Everything will work out for us now. We just have to have a little bit more patience, which none of us seem to be born with, and none of us seem to be able to locate on Amazon, in order for the storyline to actually anchor in and take place, which we likely will not see until we get into the first week or so of Cancer season, because of course that summer solstice, opening up new levels of soul contracts, new levels of opportunities, and new levels of karma for us. So figure out where it is that this new moon in Gemini is taking place in your chart, what area of life you can expect this both division and merging to take place in, and of course where you are about to see the major change and major transformation take place in your life the most.